Hello, today I want to look at one of my lesser favourite colours, and yet it's one that I've been using all the time recently, and that's green, and in particular natural kind of greens that I've been using for landscapes. I thought it might be interesting if I do a summary of the greens that I've been using most. I'm just going to start by swatching out some of my favourite green watercolours. So this is the palette which I've been using the most out and about, and the greens which I've been using really frequently in it. First and foremost, Undersea Green by Daniel Smith. I like this one because it's a granulating paint, and so it naturally puts texture in to the painting without you even having to try very hard. And it gives that kind of interest that you might get when light is falling on leaves differently, that kind of thing. Another paint that I've used an awful lot recently is Dark Forest from Gallo. And then the last pre-mixed green that's in my little travel palette is Leaf Green from Holbein. So if I show you the sketchbooks that I've been using recently, I think almost all of them have just been using these greens. Other greens that I've been using quite a bit too are from my Roman Szmal set. This palette was never really intended as a complete palette, it was just me buying colours that I like the look of. So it's not a comprehensive mixing palette. It doesn't even have ultramarine blue in it, for example, but it does have some nice greens in. I think one of my favourites from Roman Szmal is Aquarius Green. It's another granulating paint, and it's actually quite similar to Undersea Green from Daniel Smith. Roman Szmal's Hooker's Green. It's quite bright, but it's I still think it's quite a natural green, like the highlights on grass and things like that. I also really like this olive green light. And this is deep green gold from Roman Szmal as well. It's a little bit on the bright side, but I still think it has this kind of lovely highlight colour that you get in plants sometimes. And then finally from my Roman Szmal palette, there's this Perylene Green. So these last 5 from my Roman Szmal palette, they're the ones that I've been using in my Cardi Fat book. So these are the kind of greens I've been doing with those. Also in the past I've used quite a few granulating paints for natural greens, so I'll show you some of my favourites of those. This is Green Appetite Genuine from Daniel Smith. Another green that I really like, granulating one from Daniel Smith, is Zoisite Genuine. This one might be classed more as a brown, but it does lean towards the green, and it's German greenish raw umber. I find it a really, really useful colour for landscapes. So these three colours are the ones which I've used a lot in my small watercolour paintings like these ones. So these are my most favourite greens, but I do have some other good ones which I thought it might be good just to remind myself of. So I'm going to swatch out some more of the more natural kind of greens. So this is a nice muted grey green. This is Holbein's Davies grey. This is about as blue a green as I would want to go, and this is probably too much even. But this is Sennelier's Forest Green. And again, this is another one I haven't really used in landscapes, but it's a lovely one, and I do want to try using it more. And that's Daniel Smith's Jadeite Genuine. So I've been trying out Rosa Gallery paints lately. I haven't bought colours which I thought might be really similar to these ones. So I'll just show you what I've got. This is chromium oxide. And then another Rosa Gallery one that I like. Again, this is very bright and we need toning down, but it's the kind of colour that is useful for highlights in a landscape. And that's Aureoline Green. Lovely transparent one. So another granulating green that's quite similar to Daniel Smith's Undersea Green and Roman Szmal's Aquarius Green is A. Gallo's Olive Green Deep. Oh, I think this is a really gorgeous one. I do actually have a couple of olive greens, but for some reason I hardly ever use them. Let's take a look at them now. This is Sennelier's Olive Green. And this is Daniel Smith's Olive Green. I actually really like the Daniel Smith one. I think I'm going to have to try and maybe switch it out for a colour in one of my portable palettes, so I'll start using it a bit more. And then two final ones. This is Jackson's Permanent Sap Green. And then one final green, which I'll include. I haven't used it yet as it's quite new. But I think it looks absolutely lovely. And this is Quartz Sap Green. So I do have other green watercolours, but I am just looking at my most favourite ones at the moment. And then the warmer greens that I've got. And here are the ones that I really enjoy or feel like I want to use some more. So the other thing I wanted to do today is look at some good mixers for making my own greens. So when it comes to mixing greens, obviously blue and yellow make green, but depending on which blue and which yellow you use and how much red is in either of those colours will depend on how earthy and how much brown is in the mixture. So I'll show you what I mean. So if you've got lemon yellow, which is a very cool yellow, meaning it doesn't have very much red in it. And if you mix that with a very cool blue, this is a PB15:3, you're going to get very bright, unnatural kind of greens because there's no red in that mixture. If you want more of a muted green, you need to have either the blue or the yellow or both lean towards red a bit. So if I take a lovely warm yellow, this is golden yellow from Rosa Gallery, and I'm going to mix it with French ultramarine from Daniel Smith, which is quite a warm blue, meaning it's got some red in it. So it's making a very brown kind of green. We get this lovely muted shadowy green. I think one of my favourite colours for mixing greens is Daniel Smith's Quinacridone Deep Gold, and I really like it mixed with French ultramarine. You can get brighter greens with it too. I quite like it mixed with phthalo turquoise. And you get lovely kind of forest greens from it. Another nice colour to mix with Quinacridone Deep Gold is a PB60, so an Indan-Throw and Indan-Threne kind of blue. And you get even darker, richer greens. If you want a slightly brighter green, kind of a sappy green, this is a PY150, which is, this one is Rosa Gallery's Oraline. And then this is a PB60, which is Rosa Gallery's Blue Indan-Threne. It's not quite as browny a green, but it's still got a mutedness about it. The thing I found in common for all the greens that I like mixing is that I like using transparent yellows and transparent blues to do it with. I also like using the ultramarine in my mixers, because if you can see, it hasn't fully dried yet, but if you can see the difference here, where the ultramarine's been used, you get some granulation and really interesting kind of greens, whereas whenever you use the Indan-Threne blue, it's a smoother kind of green. And I've done these in quite concentrated mixers, but obviously you can get, you can get different kinds of greens. So when I wash them out like that, you can see that they're starting to approach the kind of greens that I'm enjoying in my pre-mixed green range. But you're more in control of things like granulation and a bit more interesting separation. So I think this is lovely where the ultramarine is starting to granulate. Also, what I'd like to do is pick out some of my absolute favourite natural greens from other media. I'll start off with the Derwent Inktense. These have some of the richest natural greens. Also from Derwent, I've got some Graphitints, which are beautiful greens and also water soluble. It's green grey. Ivy. And this is meadow. Next up, I've got 3 greens from the Derwent Drawing range. Then I've got 3 from the Derwent Light Fast range. I don't have many blue greens in my list of favourites for doing landscapes, but these are quite greyed out blue greens. And then I've got 4 Caran D'Ache Neocolor 2 crayons, which I used quite a lot on my Nepal trip, just for extra detail over watercolours. Then next up are my Caran D'Ache Luminance pencils. I absolutely love these for mark making over the top of watercolour, and I wish they had more greens actually, but these are the ones that I've used a lot. And then I haven't used these so much in my recent landscapes, but just for the sake of comparison, I've pulled out some of what I think are the best, most natural greens from the Polychromos range. And then one missing, rolled off onto the floor, which I think is a brilliant one, and that's kelp green. So I find when you're adding detail onto landscapes, I'm always craving a dark, rich olive green for like shadow areas. And I just wish that that luminance had something more like leaf green or this light olive that are quite yellow, but they're also a little bit greyed out and very dark. The dark phthalo-cyanine green is probably the closest, but I feel like there's big gaps in the luminance range as far as natural greens go, and in the Neocolors as well. I really, really wish they did something dark and olivey like that. Yeah, this kelp green is probably the closest to what I'm thinking, though even darker than that would be useful. Well, I hope that was either useful or interesting for somebody out there. And I'll just show you the watercolour sheet again now that they're all dry. And here are the mixes that I did with the names on. Well, thanks ever so much for watching. Bye!